Have you ever seen this sticker inside of your truck door jamb and wondered what it was for? It's got some valuable information on it. It tells you your tire size, tells you maximum payload, and it tells you what the cold inflation pressure for your tires should be to achieve that payload. This is another sticker that tells you what the gross axle weight rating is for each one of your axles and what tire pressure you need to achieve that payload. This is a very important sticker if you're planning on towing a trailer like I do.
Hi everybody, it's Jim here. We're in the Ram 2500 Cummins Diesel Limited. We're going to try an experiment today. I'm going to set my tire pressure to 65 psi and then 60 and then 55.
The plan is to inflate the tires to 65 psi cold, drive a 12-mile circuit on the freeway at 65 miles an hour. At the end of each lap, I'll reduce the tire pressure by 5 psi until I've done all 3 laps. And then I'm going to evaluate by the seat of my pants which one rides and handles the best.
Okay, well, we're here at the Sam's Club parking lot where I'm going to set up my iPad to measure the vibration, and I'll show you that in just a second.
No, I'm not going to show it to you because actually it didn't work very well. I found this neat app that would record the iPad accelerometer outputs and create a screencast file, and I thought I could analyze that. But it didn't work for me because the files were too big. It filled up my iPad with data, so much data I couldn't do anything. It locked up, and the iPod does not display the screencast.move file anyway.
Okay, here's the iPad. The app we're going to use is called Logger. It's got a picture of a bonsai on it. We're going to bring that up. I'm going to set it to record. It's going to record directly off of the internal sensors in the iPad. And you can see it's started recording already. Now all we've got to do is take our little round trip and we'll be ready to go. Okay, we've completed the first half of our journey. The trip length was about 6 miles at average speed of just over 60 miles per hour. We're going back for the return part of the trip now. I'm still on the access road. You can see a little bit of jounce here as we go over some of the joints. This is the asphalt road that we're driving on now, but it does have some dips up and down. Now we're going to merge onto the freeway. This is Highway 183, and we're going to head back the other way. 65 psi all around in the tires after they've warmed up. They're now running between 68 and 70 pounds in the tires. Rears are 68, the front is 69 on the left, 70 on the right. Started off at 65 psi, but the pressure builds up as the tires get warm. Maintaining 65 miles an hour. Seat of the pants, it's a pretty good smooth ride. This is a smooth road, not a whole lot of expansion joints. Mostly the big bumps are coming from the joints where we join a bridge, where we're going over an underpass. Going past Oak Knoll exit. That was a bridge expansion joint there. A couple more expansion joints, a couple more. Back on firm ground now. So, except for the expansion joints, I would say this is really a pretty smooth ride. Again, we started at 65 psi, 69 and 70 in the front, 68 and 69 in the back right now. Okay, completed the first round trip. We're going to do trip number 2. I've deleted 5 psi of pressure out of each tire. The backs are now set to 63 psi. The fronts are set to 65 psi. Okay, that just completed round 2 or lap 2 of our 3-lap test. During that test, I had the tires inflated to what would be the equivalent of 60 psi cold. They're currently reading 67 in the front, 64 in the rears. And the 60 psi test results, seat of the pants, tells me it took out a lot of the little small ripples in the road, but actually the big bridge expansion joints, I felt a little bit more pitchy, like I was pitching back and forth more than I did with the 65 psi cold inflation. So we'll lower the pressure again, 5 more psi to equivalent of a 55 psi cold. We'll see how that does. Okay, I've let some air out of the tires. Front tires are now set to 62 psi, rear tires to 59 psi. That's equivalent to a 55 psi cold setting. We've done 2 laps of our test loop right now. All right, we're at 65 mile an hour. We're on the out lap of our third and final run. This is equivalent of 55 psi cold. Running 64 miles an hour. The small little jiggles actually seem like they're a little bit worse, whereas the big bumps like these bridge joints feel a little bit better. I'm not really sure what's going on. I'll have to look again at the data when I get back. But this is probably maybe my least favorite inflation. There's some little bumping around, jumping around here, which I didn't feel at the other 2 inflations. So it's kind of pitching the truck around, right to left, left to right, front to back. And the noise seems to have picked up a little bit. At this point, I would say my favorite inflation of whether 55, 60, or 65, it's going to be 60 to 65 psi. And since the door jamb says 65, that must be what the engineers thought would be best as well. I use the truck for pulling an Airstream trailer, and what I'm trying to do is just get my tire pressures tuned to give me the best ride that I can get. All right, we're on the access road now. Access road feels really nice at 40 miles an hour. So a couple things. I think it's speed, it's tire pressure, and it's road surface. Smooth road gives a smooth ride. We're making our U-turn now under 183. We're going to head back south on 183 now. And away we go. On this undulating asphalt, it's real pitchy. I feel like I'm being rocked back and forth quite a bit. Expansion joint to enter the freeway. Bridge joint, another one. Yeah, that's just, the truck is just jumping all over the road. So definitely not as good a ride with the 55 psi cold. All right, I got back home. We did 3 test runs, one at 55 psi cold inflation pressure, one at 60 psi cold inflation pressure, and one at 65 psi. Of the 3, the worst was actually the 55 psi. My suspicion is that the tires were doing the work that the springs and shocks should have done working together. And the truck would tend to wallow around every time you hit a bump, big or little. Didn't like that at all. I think the best tire inflation pressure as far as ride and handling goes is going to be the 65 psi, and interestingly enough, that's what it says on the door plate of the truck. I've got 285/60 by 20-inch light truck tires, the Firestone Transforce all-terrain type tire. I feel like it's a good tire. I just wanted to know what inflation pressure to set it to get the best ride. And I think I found it. I'm going to set it to 65 psi. And when I tow, I'll probably bump that up to 67 psi in the back, leave it at 65 in the front. That's all from Jim. I'll talk to you next time.
Here's what we learned from the experiment. I thought the 65 psi gave me the best compromise of ride and handling. As I lowered the tire pressure, the damping became less, and I just had to give up too much in my handling. Maybe you saw some of that as my head and shoulders were bouncing around during the videos. So my recommendation is go with the tire pressure placard, their recommendation. I probably will add a couple of more PSI in the rear when I hook up my trailer, as the load in the rear is going to go up a little bit. So what I'll do is try 65 PSI in the front, 67 in the rear, and I'll see how that does. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have the right tire pressure in your tires for a smooth ride in your vehicle, whatever it may be.